Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I want to talk about the new He-Man show called Masters of the Universe Revelation. It just came out yesterday, and I sat with my wife and watched the whole thing, the 5 episodes. And I think I probably would have watched it anyway just because it's something to watch, and I remember He-Man from my childhood, even though I wasn't really huge into it. But I really wanted to watch this when it came out because there's been so much said about it for so long since I guess some of the plot and character details leaked a while back. And none of it was good that I'm aware of. There was a lot, I'll put it this way, there was a lot of negative coverage of this thing because somewhere along the line, somebody got it in their head that this was going to be yet another woke assault on an existing property that the anti-woke crowd always goes nuts over. And I just had to see if what they were saying was true, that it was crazy woke, or if they were full of shit. Because most of the time, when they say this stuff about something, they're full of shit. I'm not somebody who can never recognize when something is woke. Supergirl season 4 was extremely woke, and I was not happy about it, even though I agreed with the messaging that they were putting out. Because the fact of the matter is they were putting it out far too strongly. They were hitting the audience over the head. It was super heavy-handed, and it just took you out of it. It made it stupid, and I didn't like it. Fortunately, they hadn't done that in previous seasons, and fortunately, they haven't really done it in the subsequent seasons that have come out so far, or parts of seasons that have come out so far in the case of season 6. So it's not something that continued, but they went whole hog on the woke thing in season 4, and I didn't like it, just because it was so heavy-handed. I've seen things in Batgirl season 2 that were sort of woke tinged. And in my reviews, I called them out for it. I didn't think there was a whole lot of woke in Batman season 2, but if you listen to these anti-woke people, it was in every frame and every syllable uttered. That's just not true. So I see it when it's there, but most of the time it's not really there, and these people are full of shit. So I had to see if this was yet again the case with He-Man, and I think it is. I think it's the case. I think they're full of shit. Their main complaint seems to be that it's not the He-Man show, that the show is not He-Man centric, like the original He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. They're unhappy with the fact that this part of the first season, part 1, is Teela centric and female centric. And first of all, those are two different things, right? Because you can be upset that your main character isn't in it, but not upset that it's female-centric, or you can be upset at both things. And they're upset at both things, which I think is ridiculous. First of all, this is something that's never been done in the He-Man universe before. It's an exploration of what would happen in Eternia if He-Man died. Spoiler alert. And as well as if Skeletor died. And I don't understand why they don't think that that's a valid story to tell. I think it is. I think it's a valid story to examine what would happen in Eternia, how would things look, what would the characters do if He-Man went away, if Skeletor were no longer the big bad. So I think that's a valid premise, and it's something they haven't done before in this universe. So they went ahead and did it. So, of course, for a few episodes, in this case 5 so far, He-Man's not going to be in it. So why is that a big deal? One of the things they'll say about why it's a big deal is, oh, they were lied to. When the rumors came, first of all, the trailer is deceptive. It doesn't let on that He-Man's not in the first part. It makes you think that he is. And then when rumors came out that he wasn't, Kevin Smith and possibly others denied it. Well, no kidding. They're not going to give away the plot of the thing in the trailer, especially when it's something that apocryphal for the universe, right? Even when rumors come out, they're not just going to say, "Oh well, you got us." Yep, you got us. The plot of this part of the season, these first 5 episodes, is what would happen if He-Man dies, so he's not in it. They're not going to do that. It's not reasonable to expect them to do that. So I don't understand why they're upset. Now, if they continue on with this thing in part 2, and they continue to have He-Man like on the bench, and he's not in play, and he's not in play in a big way, then I'll say, okay, that's dumb. In part 2, He-Man needs to be back and be big and be the leader and the champion, and it just needs to be. If they don't do that, then yes, I'm going to say it's stupid and wrong and they screwed the fans. But I don't think that's what they're going to do. They'd have to be crazy to do that. I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe it'll turn out that I'm wrong, but we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, I don't see why it's a big deal that the first 5 episodes out of 10 depict Eternia without He-Man. It's new ground, right? Do you want them to cover old ground and just do the same old thing? So I don't understand that. I don't understand why they're upset that it's female-centric in his absence. Could they have worked in a little bit more with Man-at-Arms, for example? Could they have had other male characters that were in the old show, show up and balance things out? They could have, but they didn't. So what? Does the show have to be male-centric for you to like it? I don't understand. And if it's not that, if it's the case that you're okay with a female-centric cast, but you're sensing that they did that specifically to minimize men or something, and that it's some kind of statement or slight, I can understand you finding that to be not cool, but like, it doesn't make the show crappy. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, separate that from whether the show is or isn't good the way it is. And they refuse to do that. They shit all over it just because it's female-centric and that it might be that because of some kind of agenda. Like, that's not cool, I get it, but you don't have to shit on the show itself. The story's either good or it isn't, and I thought it was good. It's not high art, but it's a good story. So I didn't get that. I think they're full of shit on that. Some of the other complaints they have to do with the story itself. One thing that Doomcock said, he said a number of things. One thing he said in his negative review of the one episode that he watched is that males are treated badly in that one episode. And one example he gives is that when Prince Adam comes up behind Teela and gives her a hug from behind, her response is to swing him around and put him in a headlock. Because how dare there be heteronormative activity in a show, and how dare a woman be hugged? That's not why she does it. She does that because she's a trained soldier, a captain of the guard, who is trained to react that way if grabbed from behind. Yeah? How about that? Does that make sense? Yes, it does. It makes complete sense. She didn't know who it was. She didn't know what was going on. She reacted like a soldier would react to being grabbed from behind. That's it. And you're reading into it if you see anything else. Another thing that Doomcock said is that all the male characters in this are humiliated. The reaction to the hug of putting Prince Adam in a headlock was humiliating. Skeletor being zapped and knocked down by the sorceress is humiliating. He-Man sort of failing in a simulation early in the episode is done to humiliate him. Even though they reverse it later and show that he gets the better of whoever in the next scene, that isn't good enough. They still humiliated him. And that was done for a reason, to put men in their place. No, it wasn't. And why shouldn't we humiliate the villain? Like, I understand he's supposed to be a big bad and a tough and threatening and all that, and that if you wimpify your bad guy, he's not a bad guy, but like, that doesn't mean you can't show someone getting the better of the bad guy. That's what's supposed to happen. So these complaints that they depict him as an idiot and they humiliate him, yeah, because that's how you treat bad guys. Like, really? The other thing that they make a big deal of, Doomcock and others, is that all the female characters are not only shown to be powerful and wise and in leadership roles and center stage, but they're also butched up or made to look masculine. And they think that this was done to remove the ability for men in the audience to find them sexy because that's oppressive of women. And so by doing this, they're striking back at evil men. So again, they think it's agenda driven. Now, I think it's partly agenda driven. I think a lot of modern content creators realize that in the past, women were treated like objects and like pieces of meat. And so they're trying to say, we're not going to do that anymore. It doesn't feel right. Women don't like it. They never liked it. And we're listening now, and we're not going to do it anymore. That's all. That's all it is. It's not a rebuke of men. It's not a strike against men. It's just leveling the playing field and doing the right thing. And, you know, some of the pushback I get against that from some of these people when I discuss this with them on Facebook is that, well, then why is He-Man still in a loincloth and showing 95% of his chest if objectification is wrong? Okay, fair question, but here's the thing. Whenever men are objectified, and they are in movies and film and things, books, they're not reduced to agencyless, powerless furniture. They're not reduced to entities that have no power. They're not reduced to entities that are shown as having no intellect or very little intellect, or as only being into the superficial or as being superficial. But when women were objectified or are objectified in media, they almost always are depicted that way. No power, no agency, intellectually inferior to men, and superficial. So, and women aren't always portrayed that way, but when they are portrayed in such a way that they're basically turned into walking sex machines, they're also shown to be all those other things a lot of the time. Certain characters aren't, right? Like Lara Croft is always shown as smart and sexy, always shown as powerful and capable and sexy. But very often, and too often, especially in the past, women were shown to be just objects. Women were also, in real life, not allowed to vote at first. They couldn't have credit in their own names at first for a long time. They were all but outright barred from becoming doctors and scientists and things of that nature. And even when they got past all of that in real life and in terms of how they were depicted in media, they were still often treated as second-class citizens in media and in real life. So if now producers are saying, content creators are saying, we're not going to do that anymore, why can these people in the anti-woke crowd not accept it? Why is it suddenly unenjoyable? Doesn't that say something about their tastes? Doesn't that say that they're only happy if men are projected one way and women are projected another, or presented one way and the other gender another way? Isn't that kind of sad if it's true? I think it is. You know, someone pointed out to me that even Evil Lynn in this is presented as being jacked up, the big beefy arms, and there's really no reason for that. She's not a soldier like Teela. She's not a fighter like Teela. She's a magic caster. So why is she that way? I don't know. Maybe it's because, yes, they're trying to make it so the women aren't presented as sex objects. Why is that not okay? Like, why can you only like a thing if they are presented as sex objects? Because you take it as a commentary on you and on men? Like, that's on you, man, if you're taking it that way. And, you know, and it goes so far as where they say things like, oh, they turned Teela into a lesbian. The side of her head is shaved. The way she wears her hair is like a lesbian. She looks like a lesbian. They dressed her like a lesbian. It's funny because, they never said any of that stuff about the Cara Dune character in The Mandalorian, who's presented pretty much the same way as Tila is presented in this new show, as a soldier, as a fighter. Because the actress is a fighter, for one thing, but they don't complain about that. They don't complain that she doesn't waltz around in cleavage bearing, midriff bearing, ass cheek bearing, thigh bearing, calf bearing attire. Why? Because they only want to complain about things that they perceive as being aimed at them as an attack on them, when that's not what it is. I don't understand it. Tila now looks like Cara Dune. You accept one, you reject the other. Why? There's no sense to it. There's nothing wrong with how either character looks. Even in real life, in her fighting attire, Gina Carano doesn't look terribly feminine. And to be fair, original Tila didn't look terribly feminine. She wore lipstick, okay? But her hair was up. She was wearing like a wrestling leotard and wrestling boots. She didn't look terribly feminine to begin with. So I don't know what they're getting at. I really don't. And there have been other iterations of these characters that didn't get this flack for being not feminine. In fact, I think the iteration of the Tila character from the version of the Masters of the Universe that came out in the early 2000s is more feminine than the original. So I don't understand what their problem is. I really don't. Other than they just perceive Kevin Smith as being aligned with a certain political ideology, and they perceive Hollywood as being aligned with a certain political ideology, and they are not themselves aligned with that political ideology, so they have to see attacks in everything that the other side puts out. They have to see everything as an affront to them, an insult to them, a slap in the face to them, and so they shit on it. And they shit on it without watching it. Doomcock said he watched one episode. A bunch of people that I spoke with said they watched 1 or 2 episodes and they won't watch any more, because the story focuses on women who look like Cara Dune, whom you like. How does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense. Some of the other criticisms that this show has gotten from some people that I've spoken to has been that, and Doomcock said this as well, that part of the plot was how angry and upset Tila got because people lied to her or didn't tell her the truth about Adam being He-Man. And if you listen to Doomcock, this was done because they're trying to say, how dare you lie to a strong, powerful woman? And they're trying to say that they showed Tila as being the bestest ever, because you just can't lie to her because she's the bestest ever. And lying to her is a big, big sin. That's not what they're saying. That's not anything that's being said. They just showed her as a person who was hurt by the fact that her friends and family kept the secret from her. Last time I checked, most people would be upset if their friends and family kept a big secret from them. So I don't understand their objection to this. Do I think the reaction the character had was an overreaction? Do I think the way they wrote it made her seem like she was making a bigger deal out of it than needed to be made out of it? Yeah. But they weren't trying to say you can't lie to a woman because women aren't the best. They're not saying that. They're just trying to, it's a plot device, and being upset about that would be a natural reaction. So I don't understand why they're upset with it. I didn't think it was great that she took it as far as she did, but it's a plot choice. Another thing they criticized, one person I talked to, was the fact that He-Man's cross on his chest piece was changed from a cross into an H. And that was done because the producers are anti-Christian and the show was anti-religious. And that's why they did that. And that's also why they had the plot with Triclops about anti-magic and pro-technology because it's supposed to be down with religion, pro-science. It's a political message for the modern world. Yet he's a bad guy for doing that. And the good guys are trying to restore magic because they're pro magic. So, how is this an anti religious allegory exactly? It's not. The fact of the matter is that He Man's chest piece was also changed in the version of this show that came out in the early 2000s. Not into an H, it was turned into like a different shape, but nobody complained that that was anti religious. The other thing you have to understand too is that this show, and even in the early 2000s, was probably worked on with an eye on foreign markets, okay? China, other parts of the world where Christianity is not the main religion. So they didn't want to tie themselves to a symbol that can also be associated with that religion as well as anything else you might associate it with, which of course wouldn't have been a concern when they made the first one in the 80s, because the primary concern there was to sell toys in the United States and probably Western Europe. They weren't thinking about super foreign markets. But Netflix is global, 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 okay? So it's going to be seen everywhere. And did they maybe want to distance themselves from a Western philosophy? Well, it's Middle Eastern, but did they maybe want to distance themselves from like a Western religion? Yeah, I'm sure they did. But that's about money. That's not about being anti-religion. So I just, the people in the anti-woke crowd need to stop drinking so much caffeine or something because they are out of their minds. Now, I do want to give a shout out to Mecha Random 42 because I saw her review. And even though she's one of the people that came out a number of times before this thing came out and shit all over it based on rumors, which, okay, turned out to kind of be true, she did give it a fair review. She did say, you know what, I liked it. And she did say that, yeah, it's dumb that He-Man's not really in it, but he could be in part two. He's probably going to be in part two. Let's wait and see whether or not he's in part two before we accuse them of completely sidelining the main character. So I want to give her props for that because I very often disagree with her. And I think she was wrong to shit on this thing as many times as she did before it came out. But she's seen it and she said, you know what? I liked it. And she knows people are going to shit on her for that. And they are because they're stupid. And she said it anyway. So props to her. Good on you, Mech. That was the right thing to do. I thought the show was good. I'm looking forward to part two. And if I didn't say so before, I'm going to say it now. If they don't make part two more He-Man centric, and if they don't bring him out of the dark and put him in the forefront and make him the hero and make him the guy that pretty much takes down Skeletor with a little bit of support, that will be dumb. In fact, I know I already said this, but I'm saying it again. That will be dumb. Because they already showed what would Eternia be like without He-Man. Okay, you did that. Now for the next 5 episodes, you need to say, we know what happened. Now this is how we're going to fix it, and it's going to involve He-Man big time. And that's what you have to depict. Otherwise, yeah, it's dumb. It's not the He-Man show anymore. And it used to be He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So He-Man was always the focus in the past. That has to be the case again, or it's not in alignment with what the show originally was. I can give them the leeway of taking him out of the picture for the first half of the story and showing something different. I can do that. But he can't be benched the whole time. That'll be dumb, and I'll be the first to say so. But we have to wait and see. And these people don't want to wait and see. They gave up after episode 1. It's sad. It really is sad. Now, I said it before, this wasn't high art, but I thought it was good. What did I specifically like about it? I think they did some great characterization with Evelyn, the way they showed her to be not just this one-dimensional, cackling, evil person. They gave her some heart. I think Lena Headey did an excellent job with the voice. She was the standout by far of the voice cast. I thought they did a good job with Orko. I don't really remember much about Orko from the original, but they gave him some strong stuff. So I thought that was cool. I thought the art was fantastic. I enjoyed it. I do have some critiques. I think Sarah Michelle Gellar was horrible. Love Sarah Michelle Gellar, huge Buffy fan. She was horrible. Only towards like the end of the 4th episode, maybe the 5th episode, she started like really putting some characterization into her line readings. But other than that, she was horrible. And I can't lie, I just have to state the truth. I thought that Skeletor sounded too much like the Joker. He sounded nothing like Skeletor from the original show. And I'm not saying Mark Hamill had to go that way, but I think he should have. And if he wasn't going to, I think he definitely should have done something different than what he did, because Skeletor just sounded like the Joker. Like a slightly less animated Joker. And that's just not good. Not good. That's really all I wanted to say. I thought it was good. Again, not high art, decent story, valid story. I don't think any of this, oh, it's woke crap is true at all. And I'm looking forward to part 2, which, if it doesn't include He-Man in a much bigger way, will be worthy of derision, and I will give it some. But that's a ways off, so we'll have to wait and see. I'll be back with another video soon. Until then, I take my leave and I say peace and long life.